Focus tonight is China's human rights violations. That's our talking point, or our in focus tonight, China's human rights violations. To talk more about that, I'm joined by Dilip Sinha, former permanent representative of India to the United Nations, and also by Professor Srikant Kondapalli. He teaches at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Thank you both gentlemen for joining me. First to you, Professor Kondapalli. As a China watcher, give us a sense of what is happening in Xinjiang. Many rights groups have said, well, the Chinese have been committing human rights abuses. Western countries have said, the Americans have called it genocide. Many lawmakers in Western countries have termed it as that. UN stops short, the UN Human Rights Office stops short of calling it genocide, but says they could likely be crimes against humanity, but they're in any case serious violations. The Chinese says, well, these are motivated allegations. In fact, we are fighting the war against terror. So what really is happening in Xinjiang?
Thank you very much. I think the 2018 August United Nations Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination they came out with a report at that time about the incarceration of over 1 million Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Since then, there has been a lot of attention on the situation in Xinjiang. In 2016, the first vocational education training centers were detected in Xinjiang, and BuzzFeed News identified over 268 newly built detention centers in Xinjiang at the time. Later, it was followed by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, which stated that in its findings, 80,000 Uyghurs were forced to work in factories in Xinjiang, producing goods to global brands like Apple, Nike, Volkswagen, and other companies. In May this year, just before the UNHCR delegation by Michelle Bachelet visited Kashgar and 2 other cities in Xinjiang, and also had a video call with President Xi Jinping and Foreign Minister Wang Yi. At the time, there was the Xinjiang police files, a cache of reports, some 3,000 images of the detainees, 3 lakh personal records, some 23,000 detainee records, and 10 camp police instructions. All these found that there is indeed a problem within Xinjiang. And Adrian Zenz, who was banned from Xinjiang, was preparing this report. And that formed the basis for the UNHCR reports, where they visited several places in China. So the context is that Xinjiang is over a 1/8 of the territory, 9 million square kilometers of territory. 1/8 of that is Xinjiang. It has a lot of mineral resources, uranium, Loknor nuclear testing site, energy from Tarim Basin. So as a result, what has happened is, when Han Chinese were just about 7%, now they became nearly 45% of the local population, while the Uyghurs were about 70% before. Now they are about 35% in their own land. So this is the major grouse that they have. And 4 types of genocide the critics point out. One is the demographic genocide, with these influx of the Han Chinese displacing the Uyghurs in all activities. Second is religious sterilization and cultural genocide and economic genocide. These were problems that Uyghurs faced, and so there was also violence in Xinjiang.
Okay. Ambassador Sinha, what are these VTechs, those vocational training institutes that the Chinese say they want to send people to re-educate them. Why do they need to be re-educated? Is there extremism? Is there Islamic extremism? Because there is East Turkestan terrorist forces which are operating out of Afghanistan, neighboring Afghanistan. So what really is the reality of that, and why do people need to be re-educated?
Well, this region was conquered by China repeatedly over the last 200 years. It was made into a province about 130 years ago, but it has repeatedly fought for its independence and breaking away from China, including in the period after the fall of the Manchu dynasty until the Communist Revolution took place, and then they reconquered Xinjiang. So they have changed. China has changed the name of the region. Xinjiang is a Chinese name given by China. So China's problem in this region is that the people of this region have not accepted Chinese rule, and they constantly rebel against it. China calls them splitists or secessionists, and anybody who protests against Chinese rule is called then a terrorist. So these people, China thinks, need to be Sinicized, that is, they must learn Chinese culture, they must give up their own Uyghur culture, they must learn the Chinese language, and they must be totally converted to the Chinese way of living. And that is where these schools that they have set up are called the re-education centers, where they are forcibly taken. Many of them are taken as children and separated from their families. And this is the kind of exploitation of the local population that used to take place when European imperial colonial powers conquered countries like Australia and China, and they carried out this kind of treatment against the indigenous populations. This is exactly that kind of treatment that China is carrying out against these people through these, what they call the re-education centers. That is the converting these people from their indigenous native culture to a Sinicized culture that accepts the rule of the Communist Party of China.
Okay, and under the garb of that, you say these excesses, these forced disappearance, all the acquisitions made in the UN report take place?
Yes, most reports are actually being taking place. Otherwise, also this UN report does not really say anything new. What is new about the report is that it took 3 years for the High Commissioner to publish this report, and she did it on the last day of her office.
Yeah, with just minutes left for her term to expire, I think 13 minutes or something.
China was putting huge amount of pressure upon her not to release this report. And now this is one of the things that the High Commissioner does routinely. 3-4 years ago, they published 2 reports on Kashmir. Of course, we protested, but we did not use our influence to stop the High Commissioner from publishing these reports. That is the job of the High Commissioner. But here China used its pressure to stop the High Commissioner from publishing these reports, because China has over 1 million Uyghurs, that's almost 10% of the Uyghur population, in these re-education centers. As I said, parents taken away from children, children taken away from parents, and there are all kinds of atrocities are perpetrated upon them, so that they become Sinicized or become proper Chinese citizens.
Okay. Professor Kandapalli, if we do not take sides, let's take a distanced view of the matter. The Human Rights Office of the UN has been discredited many a times in many conflicts, and it's bound to happen given the nature of the office. We as a country, India has also raised questions on many things that transpire there, and also at the Human Rights Council, which is a different body. The Chinese argument is that it is a secessionist movement, and therefore we have the moral right to put it down by force. These education centers or VTechs are where we tell them about nationalism, and therefore we are well within our rights to do that. the other side makes allegations of persecution, forced disappearances, sexual violation, all kinds of human rights abuses that one finds in these reports and many such reports, and accusations by various human rights groups, including countries in the past, which the Chinese vehemently deny. When it comes down to the Chinese saying that we are fighting terrorism and extremism, how much merit is there in that argument?
Actually, the Chinese discourse is double-edged. One, they're addressing the Islamic countries. Then they say that these Uyghurs are not Islamic enough. They drink, they dance, they eat pork, and all sorts of things they tell the Islamic countries. And in order to get their consent, in order to get their support, this is very essential for China, because 27 European countries, US, Canada and others, they have introduced a legislation in the Human Rights Council in Geneva, accusing China of human rights violations. But over 56 Islamic countries supported China in this regard, and including former Prime Minister Imran Khan. When he was asked about the situation, he said, I do not know what is happening in Xinjiang. Although they have live contacts in Xinjiang almost on a daily basis. So this is one type of argument that China does. But when it comes to the global community and Western community, they keep mentioning about the post 9/11 consensus on global campaign on terrorism. So they suggest that these are all terrorists. East Turkestan Islamic Movement, ETIM, which was a republic in 1931 to 34 and 1945 to 47. They were the East Turkestan Republic in Xinjiang. So their aspiration is to make it into a East Turkestan Republic. And so now they are using a lot of violence, and so in the post 9/11 consensus they should be curbed. So when they argue with the Western countries, they take up the 9/11 consensus. But when they argue with the Islamic countries, they say these are not Muslims.
They're not Muslims enough.
Yeah, so it is a double-edged, so they cater for different audiences in this regard, and it is actually very double speak and double standards that China is putting across. When we also see, for instance, Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to Islamabad to attend the OIC meeting, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, they raised the issue of Kashmir, but they did not raise the issue of Xinjiang, where these 1 million internment camps.
You saying the OIC did not raise this?
Both China and the OIC did not raise this.
Okay.
And most important, they diverted the whole attention towards Kashmir, the 370 article abrogation and the aftermath. So it's a very clever move that China made in having these different audiences and catering for them.
Okay. So, Ambassador Sinha, that's an interesting point. When it comes to Kashmir, or when it comes to other acts related to Muslims, the GCC or the OIC, they raise the flag saying, well, we need to protect the rights of Islam or Muslims all around the world. Why do they go silent on what is happening in Xinjiang, or do they have they raised it at GCC?
No, the OIC has never raised the issue of Xinjiang, and the reason for that is very simple. China bullies all these countries, just as it has been trying to bully the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and Pakistan plays the game of China in the OIC, and since Pakistan is a fairly influential country in the OIC, it ensures that there is never any condemnation of China on Xinjiang. The only comment that has come very, very feebly has come from Turkey once in a while, but there again China steps in and ensures that there is no such comment. China uses its economic power and also its extremely hysterical reaction to any kind of suggestion, just as it does on Taiwan. And we must also remember that China is not a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So China doesn't really believe in human rights or political rights for its people. And that is the primary difference between, let's say, India's approach to human rights and China's approach to human rights.
So you're saying realpolitik plays there. All right. Finally, Professor Kondapalli, my last question, I'll wind it up because my producer tells me I'm out of time. What would be the effect of this? How much weight does this report carry? And what would be the effect of this?
I think the Chinese would, as you have shown on the TV, Wang Wenbin's comments, they will bulldoze through the Human Rights Council meetings and would reject the report as the comments have already come out. So this would hardly have an impact in terms of China's position in Xinjiang because they completely control the entire territory and with the border cuts and other things, it is simply impossible for others to enter into Xinjiang these days. However, with the global consensus emerging and with the kind of criticism that we see on China's record, strike hard policy as they call in Xinjiang, this would possibly will have an impact in terms of the public image of China. The face of China, and that is where, because China is saying they want to be the number one in the global affairs, and so the comments related to human rights violations and others really will have a negative impact on the Chinese soft power in the coming years. Of course, China will not care for this. China will just walk through what they are doing currently, and I think it will not have an impact on the external. However, in the international fora, like the United Nations or other multilateral fora, this would have some impact. But China is trying to bribe many Islamic countries through the Belt and Road Initiative and other construction projects. So this is going to be a temporary one for the time being. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have to see how much effect it has in terms of, perception of China in the international arena. Of course, it will go down, but as Professor Kondapalli was saying, finally, what plays out in world affairs or international diplomacy is realpolitik. People choose their interest, countries choose their interest and then take positions. Well, we leave it there. Ambassador Dilip Sinha or Professor Kondapalli, thank you very much for your time and sharing your insights with us. Thank you.